You guys can hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, let's start getting guys. I think all the participants in it's 9:59 guys. Let's add everybody who's here. Kruti? Okay, we are letting everybody in now. Mute.
Checking, there is no echo.
Echo. Check. Yes.
Actually, we will not face any issue because I'm not candidate. On the
We will just wait for a minute or two for everybody else to join as well and then get started. I think it's 4 minutes in. Venkatesh, we want to start. Do you want to project the title slide or do you want to wait? Cool. So I think we should start. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We are so glad to have all of you here at the inauguration event of Code for GovTech or C4GT 2023. I am Nitin Kashyap, Senior Vice President, Head of Product at Samagra, and part of the organizing team at Code for GovTech. Before we all start, I would like to play for you a short video to get warmed up to this inauguration event. I would request all the participants to use the reaction on Zoom to share. I think I request all participants to kindly mute their mics. I think, can we mute all the participant mics? Yeah. Okay. Good. I think before we all start, let's play a short video to get warmed up to this inauguration event. So please feel free to use your reactions buttons on Zoom to share your reactions as you see the video. Venkatesh, please roll the video.
When we think of public goods like parks, we envision something free and accessible to all. In the digital world, we have digital public goods, DPGs. India has seen early success with DPGs, from your grocery payment to your online banking. UPI and Aadhaar are DPGs we all have known and used. But the need for DPGs is far beyond that. It is needed for education, for healthcare, and yes, for governance. Building DPGs is not just about building smart tech. It has to be scalable. It has to be sustainable. There will be people creating them and people adopting them. It needs innovation, feedback, young talent, community. In short, it needs you. That's why we created C4GT, to bring your talent and passion to unleash DPGs in governance. Over the next 2 months, you will write code that directly impacts millions of citizens, receive mentorship from industry experts who have built DPGs at scale, build expertise, earn a stipend, and contribute to our nation. As you join this program, we can together build a strong, active DPG ecosystem. We can't wait to get started. Here's welcoming each one of you. You are the path breakers, the pioneers. You are the C4GT 2023 cohort.
Woohoo! Welcome again to all the change makers, all the DPG builder and adopter organizations, all the esteemed guests, all the mentors, and the entire friends and family of C4GT. Now, the importance of building and adopting DPGs, modular, extensible, open source building blocks, solutions, and standards that do no harm, that anyone from Samaj, Sarkar, and Bazaar can leverage and build on to create sustainable solutions for our most pressing civil and governance need challenges in terms of achieving the SDGs is not news for anyone here. And while this space has seen tremendous acceleration and momentum in the recent years, much of the development and building activity is still philanthropically funded. On the adopter side, while both the need and benefits are clear and only increasing, it is hampered by significant challenges in terms of lack of awareness and lack of clear adoption and implementation support, etc., which further puts pressure on the development community to prioritize and spread their limited resources. Both of these challenges are super essential to solve for us if we want to achieve our vision of impact with DPGs. And the idea is to take a leaf from the proven best practices of open source development by catalyzing, growing, and empowering a passionate community of contributors, builders, and adopters for the DPG ecosystem. More specifically, the 3-year goal for C4GT is to bring on board and enable 5,000 plus active contributors to the DPGs from amongst all of us, amongst college students, working professionals, civil society, and open source enthusiasts. C4GT's approach here is a T-shaped one with 2 components. Number 1, a mentoring group where the selected contributors get to work over a 2-month period with deep and intense mentoring from many of the DPG experts on focused problem statements, the coding period for which actually starts from tomorrow, and a broad community engagement program which runs continually, where the idea is to help and incentivize and make it easy for both the builders and adopters to regularly post coding, development, design, documentation, work tickets aligned with their roadmaps, and for the builders to easily discover those, contribute to those, and benefit from those in terms of their own experience, the mentoring they receive, and reward points and badges, besides the uber satisfaction of being pillars of a community, and above all, seeing their contributions impact the lives of millions of citizens on a daily basis. Today, we have a very exciting 2 hours and a bit planned for you with distinguished panelists, stalwarts in the space of DPGs and open source, as well as virtual tech-powered inauguration event that itself is powered by a DPG. So without further ado, I would like to call upon my colleague Rahul Kulkarni to start the first panel discussion. Rahul is the chief technologist at Samagra and is an open source force to reckon with in his own right. Over to you, Rahul.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all present here. Thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedules for this inauguration event. Today, we have very distinguished guests present between us who are going to discuss with us the topic building and driving global adoption of DPGs. Let me introduce our very special panelists before we dive into the action. The first panelist we have today is Shri Abhishek Singh. Abhishek ji is a force running major population scale projects we use all on a daily basis. Every time we share a document from DigiLocker, or every time one of the 200 million students and teachers in India access QR codes in their textbooks or take tests on Diksha, somebody in Abhishek ji's team is responsible for it. Most recently, Abhishek ji has been responsible for managing innovation in India on the government level in India, starting with Bhashini for using AI with Indian languages. Abhishek ji is an IAS batch 1995 officer, presently CEO of MyGov, with an additional charge as President and CEO of NEGD, also Managing Director and CEO of Digital India Corporation. Thank you so much for joining us today, Abhishek ji. Next.
Thank you, Rahul.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Venkatesh Hariharan. When many of us hadn't even started contributing to open source, Venkatesh, or Venki as we all lovingly call him, spent 7 years at Red Hat Linux, helping build one of the most successful business models that even powers open source software today. There is no open source community initiative that is planned in India and often abroad as well without Venki's advice. Venki is the country lead for India at the Open Invention Network. I first met Venki when he was head of public policy and government affairs at Google. He completed his Knight Science Journalism Fellowship at MIT and has deep knowledge of the Indian industry, open source, and open standards like no another. Last but not the least, I'd like you to introduce the very, very special Dr. Pramod Verma. Pramod needs no introduction. Pramod's been the chief architect of Aadhaar. I remember first meeting him back in 2009 when volunteering for Aadhaar. And he's been a mentor, not just to me, but so many more, helping not just grow the open source community in India, but across the world. Pramod's been the chief architect of Aadhaar and for pretty much every one of the India stack layers, eSign, DigiLocker, Unified Payment Interface or UPI, Diksha, and so on. Pramod has also played a very integral role in architecting India's digital health infrastructure, ABDM, all across the vaccinations that we got, immunization infrastructure with CoWIN and DIVOC, and the Unified Health Interface. Pramod's been traveling a lot lately, helping different countries across the world understand how they can adopt DPGs and build population scale software in their respective countries. We're truly grateful for all the three panelists for making time in spite of their hectic global travel schedules to come together for the inauguration of Code for GovTech 2023.
Good to be here, Rahul, and by the way, loved Abhishek's and Venki's introduction. No? Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Very well done.
It went beyond what is reserved, but yes, thank you. And just to add that I'm no longer CEO MyGov. I have a colleague, Akash Tripathi, who is leading MyGov. And I do have another portfolio, Karam Yogi Bharat, which is also going to build another DPGs to the repository or DPGs that we have.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. It's amazing how you manage so many things, Abhishek. Let's dive right into it. We're all very excited. And, I've heard from some of the participants, some of the selected contributors that, oh, wow, we're going to have this panels. The panels are really the highlight of today. And so let's dive right into questions. So we're going to keep this very interactive. I'm just going to toss questions one over the other, no long talk, short answers, quick move over, and please be frank. We all want real advice of how do we move ahead. So Abhishek ji, why don't I start with you? Thinking about the big picture first. So just like physical infrastructure of roads is managed by Department of Transport and Highways, MeitY manages digital infrastructure of India. Could you give us an overview of all the different things MeitY looks at when it really comes to digital infrastructure? One of the things we don't understand, how does the government manage all of this? It's very, very difficult managing all the public infrastructure, and you have been at the center of it. If you can just give us an overview of what really happens at MeitY, what all is managed, how does digital infrastructure get created?
Yeah, while it may sound very good to believe that MeitY manages the entire digital public infrastructure, but actually it's not so. When we talk of digital public infrastructure and when we talk of using technologies for ease of living for people and citizens, the canvas is very wide, and it runs across education, healthcare, it runs across financial services, it runs across logistics. So the entire canvas is large. So it's not the mandate of only one ministry or one department to handle all of it. It requires a whole of government approach. And when I say whole of government approach, I will further qualify it by saying that it goes beyond government also. And India's story of DPGs is a classic example of partnerships between not only the government, but the private sector, and also non-profit volunteering organizations who have been part and parcel of our digital public infrastructure journey. It's like, in many ways, a whole of India approach, like all stakeholders coming together, contributing it and building it. So whether it's Aadhaar or NPCI, UPI or DigiLocker or Diksha or Ayushman Bharat Health Mission, it's like coming together of all stakeholders from all walks of life, from the government, from the private sector, industry, and the non-profits industry, and people like Pramod and all who have contributed a lot, and that's where we have reached that. That's the hallmark of our story of DPGs.
No, wonderful. I think you bring up two very important points. One is the community aspect of it. Even the government is living and breathing the whole collaborative culture. And the other aspect is you also brought up the construct of digital public infrastructure, and then there's digital public goods. So let's dive into both of these. Pramod, we direct this question at you. Can you explain to us in simple language, there is DPGs that we hear about, and those are the pieces, software pieces, open source software pieces. And then we talk about digital public infrastructure and DPIs. If you can just demystify the difference between the two, how does this actually help build the public infrastructure for any country? That'll be great at a global level.
Yeah. In fact, when I watched the video, I was thinking through the same thing. I think quite a casual use of deep Aadhaar as a DPG, but most open source is also DPG. So I think and Abhishek is right in the thick of it. Our India's G20 presidency, we have tried to create a coherent terminology and language that everybody globally can adopt. And that's how the term, and you saw the latest when Prime Minister went to US, the US President and Biden PM joint statement, also very powerfully reflecting that effort by the G20 presidency team to align so many countries, not only the 20 countries, including EU countries, includes that. But global South as well. Many countries in the global South who are not in G20 as well, right? So a lot of alignment that's gone on. So that this question is very apt in that sense. Very simply put, DPI, because this is a techie audience, so I'll use a little bit of a techie term. DPI is an instantiation of some DPGs. So DPGs are passive assets that are created typically on GitHub or other open source repositories with its own community and with its own governance, but they are passive assets. Think of them DPGs as simply as assets. DPG doesn't mean software. DPG can be specifications like backend protocol, or it can be open data like Bhashini is trying to do, right? Putting out all the Indic language data sets as public data sets, open data. Or it could be open content, like the way Diksha and many other systems are trying to do, which is in CC BY, so typical CC license, right? Creative Commons license. So it could be content, specs, of course, software and data. They all go into, or AI models, as the Bhashini team is demonstrating.
Right,
they're all DPGs. But what do you do with the DPG? Every country ought to create their own digital highways for their own resilience, their own local context and local innovation, and most importantly, sovereignty in one sense. It's very much more discussed these days with the Ukraine war. It's even more in the minds of bureaucrats like Abhishek ji in other countries, who are sitting there and saying, is digital colonization real thing? Don't we have to create some essential infrastructure, what we call national critical infrastructure, at least payment infrastructure and so on? And now people are starting to ask map, for example, maps. You come from Google, ex-Google, and Venki is ex-Google. Half of this team is ex-Google, I think. We are starting to see this question. I mean, good questions being asked. Maps were always a wartime tool. Maps created as a wartime tool. Traditionally, it was not meant for anything else. But map is an economic tool today. Maps, without maps, the Swiggy guy is lost. Uber guy is lost. Everybody is lost. So we are starting to ask bigger questions about, shouldn't maps be a critical infrastructure? When countries ask these questions, what they are saying essentially is that we want to have our own digital public infrastructure, DPIs. But if every country starts building DPIs from scratch, it takes a lot of efforts, a lot of cost, and may not even have the capacity and capability to do so. So DPGs that this open source community is going to create on GitHub with many DPGs allow other countries to create their own DPIs faster, cheaper, in their own context. That's the difference.
Beautiful. No, thank you so much for that very comprehensive and very simple language explanation. That's your trademark, Pramod. Thank you so much. I think everyone, especially all the contributors today, mentors today, have that very, very clear in their mind. Venki, on the other part that Abhishek ji mentioned in terms of community, you've seen old Red Hat days, right? The purest open source way of doing things. Maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and you've been with the open source community since then. How has the community grown? What is the community aspect of it? Abhishek ji mentioned the whole partnership aspect, the way government does it. What is it the other story on when it comes to, community like you and I?
So, 20 years ago, when we started working on Linux and open source, there was massive amount of skepticism, but there were a few early adopters. And if you look at the classic Gordon Moore crossing the chasm architecture, The early adopters were people like IIT Bombay. For example, they were using in 95, they were using Linux version 0.98 or something like that for creating the wind tunnel simulations for the light combat aircraft, what we now know as Tejas, etc. So these were the very, very early adopters. And then there were a few experimental folks who said that, let's try using it in a web server or an email server. So basically it was at the edge of the enterprise. And then over the next few years, what we have seen is that it moved from the edge of the enterprise to the heart of the enterprise. So today, for example, I think there's a very famous case study of Bombay Stock Exchange. They were running something called the tandem non-stop computing. And that system was running for 20 years continuously without a break. And the joke is that, when they tried to migrate from that to Linux, for 1 month, they had run both these things parallelly. And when they said, okay, finally, we'll switch off the tandem system, they couldn't figure out where is the off plug. So it was, it has been running for such a long time. So I think that is the journey of Linux and open source. And today, if I come to the community, today India is the third largest on GitHub. I think we have roughly about 8 million people on GitHub. The second, after US and China. But I think the work that still needs to be done is to, get Indians to contribute back to the global open source community. And I think this is where Code for GovTech is really a key initiative going forward.
Oh, that's wonderful. It was such a nice trip back in memory lane. And you never know, all these things have happened right here in front of us. You're just not aware about it. So thank you so much, Venki. And next, touching a bit of innovation. Pramod, there is the building part of it, and then there is the adoption part of it. Yeah. And lately, we have seen different constructs like Nammayatri launch in Bangalore, where 4 months ago, 5 months ago, getting a rickshaw in Bangalore was a nightmare. If at all we used to get a rickshaw, they would call back and say, Ola over the Playtech commission, so can I cancel the trip and get you directly? And today with Nammayatri, I can just create it, and the rickshaw driver is following up with me like, can I come? Where can I come? Why? Because he has zero commission. Can you just demystify this whole world to us? We have heard of Nammayatri, we have heard of Pulse Energy. Can you tell us about these business models that are actually changing out there? Pramod, would love to hear your thoughts on how.
This is, I think there is a humanity at scale always worked decentralized. We never worked centralized, right? When we have to trade or do business, we always did between two parties. You would find a local nearby and do it. But in the digital world, as digitization came up, it was not easy to digitize the edges. So what it means is that individuals didn't have a device traditionally, pre-smartphone era, and SMEs wouldn't have a device. So as computerization came in, it's very important to understand, computerization came in through enterprises, large enterprises who could invest in tandem. It never stop. It didn't break. System didn't break. It broke a pocket. You spend a lot of bloody money, okay? But it didn't break. The system didn't break. Same thing with IBM mainframes and PDP-11, VAX, PDP-11 digital systems and so on. Very, very powerful, expensive central systems. What it means is because IT was centralized, enterprises also became centralized, business also became centralized, okay? Now, that is a very important, and only thing that broke away from that is internet by itself. And Tim Berners-Lee beautifully wrote at that time, I am betting on the power of protocol and standards. And either humanity will all use internet or no one will use internet. There's no in between. Okay, there is not few people using internet. Okay, because power of internet, the power, and he said that so well, and he said it's worth betting. That simple thing like HTTP and simple thing like HTML can dramatically create a decentralized network of networks, and the more people use, the more value it unlocked, and the more value it unlocked, the more people joined, right? But not as a walled garden. Internet was never, and that's why Venki of the world and all of us When Facebook says, I'll give you free basic, we all go up in arms. We say, what do you mean? We have to keep internet free, internet net neutral, and all that argument we make, because power of not having an intermediary who controls what you see and what you read and all that thing, right? Our ability since then, what happened is the valley, the tech companies ran very fast with tech, way too fast that the standards bodies could not catch up with academic rigor of creating interoperability standards and so on. So post email, we can send from Yahoo to Proton Mail to Gmail to Outlook to anything, right? Internet works, HTTP, GSM. If you look at voice, packets travel from my Android on an Airtel network to somebody in the US who uses an iPhone on an AT&T network. Beautifully transfers voice, right? All underlying is interoperable protocols and standards, right? At the end of the day, that's what powering human scale. Now, unlike that, we saw an absolute lockdown of what we call a two-sided play, where WhatsApp is an example. If you are on not WhatsApp and if your counterparty is not WhatsApp, you can't message. Simple as that. Messaging is not interoperable, instant messaging. Although there was attempt like Jabber and all that thing early days, we never could manage because the tech companies had obviously their own incentives to create their own moat. And right or wrong is not the question. What we see is if you want anything at human scale, population scale, you cannot have one company and one app story. We need diversity, we need choice, we need continuous innovation, and that will come only from an open infrastructure, underlying infrastructure. So Beacon protocol was one such effort because we had already addressed identities, we already addressed data, we already addressed payments, and we had to address transactions. That was the last of the attack we wanted to make in opening up the innovation infrastructure. And Beacon protocol was that effort to open up interoperable transaction, peer-to-peer transaction. And 2017, we started that open source effort. Today, I'm glad that many of you are also there, actively there, but 3,000 odd people are there and they continue to grow. And Beacon protocol is allowing ground up innovation where the government, see, this is what Abhishekji's earlier point. Government cannot, one department or one government cannot do everything. That look like BSNL all over again. It doesn't work and it cannot sustainable and it is so much money. And we need diversity, we need choice, we need innovation. So India has already moved out of it, saying that no, we are going to create a combination of public innovation and private innovation combining together and creating larger economic impact, right? So Namayatri and ONDC are classic examples of a ground up. Government is not spending any money, but they're blessing because government is the biggest, they have the biggest muscle in pushing adoption, common narrative, common guidelines and all that thing, right? Regulation of sort. Lightweight regulation of sort. They are ground up movements to create peer-to-peer transaction networks. So Namaya 3 is nothing but a peer-to-peer transaction network powered by Beacon protocol, but applied in the case of urban mobility. OTC is doing for hyperlocal commerce. But what is interesting, just to close, I was in Paris a couple of weeks back and Copenhagen. We have 4 projects in Europe creating their own hyperlocal transaction network, including EV charging and energy exchange, all that thing in Berlin, Zurich, Amsterdam, and probably Paris very soon. Sujit is right there. And one year in Africa, we are starting, West Africa, we are starting an open network, open economic network in one sense to create mobility and hyperlocal commerce, and one in Brazil soon. So hopefully when Abhishek Singh and team transfers the G20 presidency to Brazil, we will have had a nice collaboration between India open source and Brazil's DPI to take over a Beacon-based network there as well. They're looking at skilling network, and all of us are, Rahul, all of us are in that also, skilling and education network as well. So it's an idea whose time has come to
Has
move
come.
from
Beautiful.
a central platform centric single vendor closed walled garden approach to an internet inspired by internet, an open decentralized network where innovation can thrive. And I'm glad Indian community is pushing the boundaries, unlike this time, unlike waiting for a Western community or a US community to thrive. I'm very glad it's a global community. Nevertheless, a lot of Indians I can see pushing this narrative. So very, very proud of the community, and proud of the fact that Indian officers like Abhishek ji and others are seeing into the future and actually supporting a very powerful support. It's very hard when we go to Africa and all we realize how far Indian officers are thinking. Although when we are inside here, we think all kinds of mess we are in every day, but we are actually quite ahead. We are quite ahead, and we are glad it's all open source because everybody can adopt. And Venki is a huge part of that advisory board for us there as well. So yeah, Venki, you had some comments. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Pramod was saying. I was speaking to somebody who's been working on deploying DPGs across Africa and other parts of the world. And I said, India is 10 years ahead of the rest of the world. And he said, no, we are actually 20 years ahead of the rest of the world, because most countries have not even started thinking about what digital public goods are and the whole of ecosystem approach that Abhishek ji mentioned. So I think, one of the things that about digital public goods is that I think finally, after almost 30 years of, being part of the IT industry, we are actually creating something that we are leading the rest
ground
of
up.
Absolutely.
Ground up. Absolutely.
So I think it's a very, very inspiring moment to be part of.
Wonderful. No, I think all of this is really coming together so beautifully. As you rightly said, time has come, but also I think it's a lot of contributions from a lot of individuals in various dimensions actually making this happen. Now, one dimension that we come to is we keep talking about this is innovation in a business model, innovation and thinking open source. There's so many innovations happening. At the same time, there are these traditional technology innovations happening. There's AI coming, right? There's this 2-3 different advances that have hit the world over the last year, maybe. You see the whole LLM wave with AI and neural networks come in, grown of age with GPUs. Then there is the other wave of course, blockchains. And, just last week, I loaded up my little digital rupee app on the phone. And I was like, wow, I actually have a digital rupee on my phone. A whole change is happening with digital currency. And then there is the whole world of quantum computing, which has promised to change communication, and not just promise, but also threat to kind of break the way we actually have security done today, right? Prime numbers are nothing for a quantum computer. So how do you move ahead in quantum resistant kind of cryptography and so on? So Abhishek ji is leading the charge in many of these initiatives. Abhishek ji, if you can give us a little perspective, how is the government thinking about AI, quantum computing and other innovations, and what is the mechanism of really driving that in India?
See, when we look at AI, of course, very often we take pride in saying that we have one of the world's largest number of AI trained engineers. We have a lot of companies and startups who are investing in AI. And in order to really, and if you look at the whole LLM revolution or the tech revolution that's happening globally, a lot of people of Indian origin are contributing to that. So we have the human talent, we have the soft talent, we have the abilities to build such solutions which can be game changers, which can create a lot of value, which can create big businesses, which can help us reach the technological give us the status of a technology superpower. All that is there. But yes, while we take pride in doing that, while we say that we are 20 years ahead, 10 years ahead of other countries and all, at the same time, we also realize that there is a lot more that needs to be done. And especially if we have to compete with the likes of the US and China in the field of artificial intelligence, we need to invest a lot more in the compute infrastructure, for example. Like we have Erawat and Param Siddhi built by CDAC, which was ranked 75th fastest supercomputer. But if we really have to run our algorithms, we need much faster machines. In fact, the Param Siddhi and the Erawat, which was 75th ranked, has got just 600 petaflops, AI petaflops speed. But if we really, and around 500 or something GPUs. But most companies like OpenAI and all, they are working on much bigger machines and much bigger infrastructure. So we do need to, but I personally feel that we do need to invest in a compute infrastructure of say 25,000 GPUs, which will allow our researchers, our entrepreneurs, our students to run their algorithms on those machines. And then we will be able to build those capacities. The second thing that we really need to work in is that how do we upskill ourselves? Because a lot of jobs in India's IT industry is the coding jobs. And the way OpenAI and LLM models are making coding easier and making it more efficient, it may end up that that the job of 3 coders is done by 1 person. If that happens, it may lead to joblessness unless we kind of reskill ourselves, upskill in order to leverage the opportunity that is coming up and be able to do more high-end jobs. That would be very, very important. If we are able to marry the talent that we have with the compute that we can set up and with the data that we have coming from all the DPG projects that we have implemented, we will have a game changer kind of solution. And that would lead to innovations in building AI-based solutions for diagnostic diseases. It will lead to building AI-based solutions for agriculture and the work that is being done by the Bhashini team, the language models that are being done. So we do have a lot of diversity with the 22 languages, with voice and speech becoming the primary mode of communication. The way technology is going, and the keyboards may become extinct. So there are a lot of opportunities which are coming up. If we are able to invest rightly in that and innovate with the ecosystem, we will be able to take advantage of the same. But it's not easy. It's not that it's given for us. It's not that we can be complacent and rest on our laurels that we are 10 years or 20 years ahead. We will need to invest a lot of effort, a lot of resources in making this happen. So that's what I feel about the AI opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. A very formidable perspective of how you're thinking about it and how the nation is thinking about it. Truly proud to be in India at this time and really ready for thinking like this. I mean, it takes courage to actually figure out the upskilling problem. It takes courage to say, hey, we don't have the fastest computer and we need to build it. And only when that is done, then the world comes together to make it happen, and we'll all make it happen. Atmanirbhar kar lenge. Moving on to want the contributors to hear from each one of you. What is that message that you would like to give them? And maybe I'll give you a little flavor. If you want to take it out, feel free to give a more generic message. But Venki, coming to you, thinking of when it comes to students, contributors, youngsters in their open source journey, one of the challenges is, should I keep my thing proprietary and do a startup around it? Or should I do it in open source? But then everybody's taking it. Then what do I get? Or then should I go for patents? Should I file patents and should I get my name on patents? What is the way that you can showcase innovation? And if you can also touch on, what are startups that have been open source and yet become unicorns? If you can just give some understanding success story of how a youngster, I'm in my 4th year engineering, how should I be thinking about the world that I should build my resume with?
So, keeping my technology proprietary is always an option. But the bottom line today is that all of the innovation is happening in the open source community. If you look at blockchain, if you look at AI, if you look at ML, if you look at Internet of Things. So pretty much this model of collaborative innovation of open source is the de facto now. 20 years ago, proprietary innovation, proprietary software was the de facto norm. And in 20 years, it has completely flipped to becoming, around collaborative innovation. So if I am keeping something proprietary, then the question I have to ask myself is, what if a competitor comes up and open sources their similar technology? The advantage for that competitor is that you have a global community, you build, you get the best of minds from around the world. And because you have so many people from around the world collaborating, the pace of innovation in open source is so rapid that proprietary software cannot catch up. Blockchain, for example, and there's hardly any proprietary technology in those areas. I mean, in the software as a service layer, you may have proprietary layers, but underlying infrastructure layers are all open source. The other bit you asked about was on patenting, and we believe that software should not be subject to patents because software is an applied form of mathematics. So mathematics is not patentable subject matter because we as a collective decided that, if one person has a patent on 2+2, somebody has a patent on 2+3, then collective human progress will be halted and stopped. Therefore, this whole thing of software patenting is something that, we are quite opposed to. I think the final point I'll make is that if you look at open source, today the Apache Foundation estimates that the projects hosted under Apache are worth about $32 billion. The Linux Foundation estimates that the projects under their foundation are about $55 billion. And these are just two small, foundations. But so the wealth of technology that has been created in the open by the open source community is worth multiple billions of dollars, and all that is freely available. And now if you say that, I have a patent on one-click shopping or machine-to-machine communications, so, you do the Zoom call, come and pay me a fee. You connect to a Wi-Fi network, come and pay me a fee. That then becomes, it becomes something that is against the global commons, that is becoming, a creator of wealth for the global economy. And long story. I can talk for hours on this, but
no, that's great. But I think you gave a very strong direction, saying stick to open source so that you will learn, so that you will do something that is world class and not pigeonhole yourself in something that is substandard that you think is good but really is not benchmark. And the other thing is help that you would actually get by collaborating. So all fantastic things. Also wanting to stress on what you said. Patents is not the thing, publications are. So get yourself into peer-reviewed publications. Just now, the Honorable Prime Minister announced something around, the National Research Foundation in India, with 50,000 crore kind of a fund for it. And so research is going to be a big thing. Further your research, share your research, collaborate. That's the way to go. We have some few minutes for audience questions also. I want to just make sure that we take some of theirs. So there is one question by Harshit. A very nice question which says, how to understand which DPIs we need to build in order to create more impact? Everyone building DPIs is about there for impact. But how do you know what will create more impact when you start? Pramod, you have initiated so many DPIs, so many things. Pramod, if you can give us a little peek into what goes on in our mind and saying, how do you conceptualize these things? Why do you start thinking about them?
Yeah, so excellent question, by the way. So the idea of DPI, it's important to understand the idea of DPIs is not to build the whole solution. It's not to build the whole full stack approach. It is sort of the antithesis to most of the product management. It's a minimalism that matters there. So what minimum building block, think of building blocks like Lego blocks, can we build that are interoperable and combinable? That allows the both public and private innovators to combine them and create more and more diverse solutions. So the speed at which solutioning, a combinatorial innovation, can really happen faster, cheaper, right? That's a real power of DPI. So one way to think about it is that we look at, actually a lot of us in the last 12 years have been asking question. We look at a problem statement. Let's say we look at agri, or we look at health, and we look at mobility, or any of this. When we look at it, we ask the question, why do we need to build a DPI at all? We start by assuming we should not build a DPI. Okay, that's very interesting. Or not, let's build something. No, we are saying, let's not build anything. What is the problem if you don't build? And then we start asking very, very, very fundamental questions about, are there sovereignty issues, monopoly issues, lack of innovation issues, or extreme high cost of innovation, cost of solutioning, cost of customer onboarding, cost of banking, or cost of anything, right? We look at cost of trust. That's what DigiLocker is all about, reducing cost of trust. Yeah. Because continuous document verification is what we are removing, right? Horrendous cost from the system, stupid cost actually to be removed. So we look at these things and what is the one thing if we can do that would create a massive nonlinear effect by across the ecosystem. That's it. Oh, KYC. If you make KYC easy, okay, great. It allows bankers to do, wallets to do, fintechs to onboard, insurance companies, Hospitals, you go to railway station, you go to hotel to check in, they ask for ID. So we ask these questions to them, what is the one thing that is minimum, but it unblocks the market from innovating their current friction. Friction may be a cost friction, or friction may be some other friction. So we look at, first starting point is that we don't need to build. Second point is that, okay, what are the friction? Then we ask the incentives and friction, lot of why behind the why, and then sort of distill to try to see if there is one thing we can do. It's a very different from a traditional product building where more features are better and more we build is better, right? It's actually the other way around. It's a very interesting journey, which is different from digitization, which is why DPI is different from digitization. Building a large portal or a full system is a full-fledged system play.
Correct.
DPI is actually ulta. So a little
Correct.
bit, yeah.
I just wanted to add to what Pramod said, and I've been observing Pramod and team for a very, very long time. And I think really one of the fundamental things that they have done is, what is called first principles thinking, breaking down a problem into the smallest component parts and questioning the status quo and, then reimagining the future and building from there on. And I think this is, again, for this particular audience, I think that's a really, really important principle to adopt if they want to become, not just developers of app, but, fundamental thinkers and people who are building architecture for the rest of the world.
Brilliant. Abhishek ji, you want to add to that?
I think the first principle
Venki has
question.
almost mentioned that. I would just like to add that there was a question what is the starting point for DPGs and how do you think of building value-added applications for that? So I'd just like to mention that DPIs, though the name is very fancy and it looks good, but actually it's the fundamental way of problem solving. Whenever, in India, we started with Aadhaar. And why did we need Aadhaar? It was not like it's a biometric project. It was there to solve the problem of identity which millions of people in India didn't have. And because they didn't have identity, they couldn't get bank accounts, they couldn't get other services. So that was the starting point. Similarly, when we go to building, say, for example, a tech platform for accessing content, then how do you go about doing it? You kind of crowdsource content in all Indian languages from various sources, ensure quality and make it available on a platform which is easily accessible to everyone. And that becomes something called Diksha. If you look at telemedicine, like eSanjeevani, you want people to have access to healthcare. You can't put doctors in every village. The best case scenario would be to put doctors and health hospitals in every village, but you can't do that. So you technology to bridge that gap. So it begins from identifying a problem, then using technology to solve that. And while doing that, use artifacts from other projects which can be used. And the microservices in the API-based system allows you to interconnect systems. And when you start interconnecting systems, that becomes what we glorify as digital public infrastructure. So that everybody does not need to reinvent the wheel. If identity problem has been solved by Aadhaar, then education, agriculture, healthcare can ride on that. If payments problem is solved by UPI, then every other system which needs payments can use that. If document dematerialization has been done by DigiLocker, then every other entity can use that. So that brings together all the projects in an interconnected manner with API, which I find very fancy piece of software. And I think that that's the answer to so many other things. And Estonia calls it X-Roads, we call it API Setu and all. And it allows every stakeholder to leverage every other product which has been built in a seamless manner. And that's what DPI is. So whenever anybody is thinking of building up a solution, you can use what is already available. You can use the Bhashini APIs for language piece. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So that's how it works.
Brilliant. All three of you, just amazing thoughts there. And I think that's a wealth of information. I think 4 years of engineering on one side and what you just mentioned in the last 10 minutes on one side, it would help build so many bigger and better things, more impactful things that the world can see. So with that, let me conclude the panel as we started off and move on to the inauguration part of it, which we are very excited to have you all three for that. I'll give you a little background here before that, but I want to really sincerely thank you for participating in this panel. I know every one of you has been traveling. Pramod just came back from you, Abhishek was in Singapore, and everyone, Venkat is just moving cities and so on. But yet you found time for this. And you've done this year, you've done this last year. Your support means everything to us. So thank you for making time for this panel. All your nuggets of wisdom will help the community actually progress so much better in the next few years. So with that, let us come to the most exciting part of today, the launch of Code for GovTech 2023. Now, as Code for GovTech is all about DPGs, as part of the launch, we are going to leverage Sunbird RC, which we set up in a couple of hours yesterday, and use the claim attest mechanism in Sunbird RC to generate a verifiable credential that will actually declare this event open. In non-tech terms, just like we have a vaccine certificate with a QR code, and the vaccine certificate gives us proof that, yes, I went to this hospital. This person gave me this batch of this vaccine on this date and time with this Aadhaar number that I have, and all of this digitally signed and verifiable by everyone. So we have proof that I actually took a vaccine. Similarly, if you think of all the inaugurations that happened today, all inaugurations are just, oh, let's just click something and a slide moves and then a curtain moves. So we're trying something ambitious today, built over just a couple of hours, remember yesterday? But that's the power of DPGs. Imagine we've set up a little public infrastructure, if you will, to launch events. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a claim to you saying, I'm going to say, it's an API call which says, hey, I claim that the event is launched. But unless all three of you actually approve that claim, attest that claim, it's not going to launch. And so I'm going to initiate that. So if we can initiate that, I'm going to set my claim. Okay. So I've clicked the claim. Now, Pramod, Abhishek ji, if you can just open up that link. Pramod, if you can open up that link and just click launch in the link that you have there.
Does the link come to our email?
Yeah, the link should have come to your email. Also, if you've seen, I've sent it to you on chat, Venki. Okay. Two links. If you can just find that link, it's sent to you on email. The link has an access token valid for some time. All right. So, Pramod, you've attested that claim. And so, great. Now, let's see. Venki, Abhishek.
I can attest that indeed.
Rahul, did you get mine? I click here to launch C4GT.
Yeah, I think you're seeing yours.
Okay,
I'm seeing this screen. Welcome, Abhishek Singh. Rahul claims code. I click here to launch C4GT. I did it.
All right, great. And there it's updated. And so all of these are actually going into Sunbird registry and credentials. And boom, because all of three got together, thing declared launch. And anyone, there's going to be a live thing, and this little QR code, you can scan it and actually see credentials. All of this, all three of you were in a registry. So we actually had a registry. All three of you were in there. The link that we shared with you had your access token, and hence you didn't need to log in separately. But all of this is gone into digitally signed attestations that actually formed this verifiable credential. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for actually launching this in this way and being available for making time for this. Thank you all. Now what I'll do is hand it over to Supreet, who's the Vice President Samagra, guiding force behind the Code for GovTech programs. He's been interacting with all of them. And thank you so much, panelists, for being there. Abhishek ji, Pramod, and Venki, thank you so much for making time today. I hope you're able to stay for the rest of the event. But thank you so much.
All the best for all the participants.
Thanks, Rahul, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Supreet.
Thank you so much, Rahul. Over the next few minutes, I will share the overview of the C4GT mentoring program and where it is currently. Here is a quick video to get us started.
Last year, C4GT had 9 projects across 8 products, involving 4 organizations and 7 mentors. This year, we have seen tremendous growth, with 104 projects across 38 products, involving 20 organizations and over 70 mentors. Applications opened on May 15th. Till June 12th, participants explored listed projects and prepared proposals for their top 3 choices. 1,500 plus proposals came in from students and professionals across 400 plus colleges and 25 plus organizations. The community has flourished on Discord as well, from 650 members last year to 9,000 plus this year. It has become a vibrant hub for collaboration, knowledge sharing, and support. After rigorous evaluation, exceptional contributors like you have been selected for the program. From July to August, you will be working on impactful projects with the assigned mentors. With that, welcome to the C4GT family. It's going to be intense. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a journey of creating impact at scale.
The C4GT mentoring program is focused on creating a hook and a short-term community spike, primarily within the student community. It's a 2-month program in which DPG building organizations propose projects, community members submit proposals for these projects, and 1 community member per project is selected and receives an enriching learning experience along with a generous stipend for the 2-month contributions. The mentoring program gives an opportunity to students and working professionals to contribute to the DPG movement, and it helps in driving wider adoption and sustainability for DPGs. As you heard, the mentoring program opened applications between 15th and 12th June. During this time period, the community members engaged with project mentors on very active channels on Discord and prepared the proposals, post which mentors reviewed the proposals, and certain projects got more than 50 proposals. The final cohort was announced on June 22nd. And since then, we've got 103 applicants who've been selected to work across 103 projects. Now, to give you a perspective, these 103 projects are from 20 organizations. These organizations include government bodies, including MITI, NHA, technology firms who are building DPGs and in certain cases also deploying these DPGs for governments. There are foundations which are building DPGs and deploying them for governments and for not-for-profit sector. There are protocol builder organizations such as FIDE, who's driving the Beacon protocol, which powers the open network for digital commerce, and Namayatri, a popular auto-hailing app. We also have product firms that are driving and creating products in which they are adopting DPGs. Over the next few minutes, we will see organizations and their products that are included in the C4GT mentoring program, along with the mentors and the selected contributors for the organization's products. Starting off, we have Avanti, which works with governments to run student learning programs. Congratulations to the contributors and the mentors who are working towards the C4GT projects. Next, we have, which is building blockchain products for governments and enterprises. Congratulations once again to the contributor who has been selected for the DV project. Then we have Digital Green, which works to improve the welfare of smallholder farmers. And once again, congratulations to the contributors who have been selected to work on the different projects at Digital Green. Then we have eGov Foundation, which is creating technology reference reusable solutions for local governments. And congratulations once again to all the mentors and contributors who are working towards eGov projects. As you would see, there are lots of contributors who are selected here as there are multiple projects that eGov has put forward. Then we have FIDE, which is building the interoperable open protocol specifications, including Beacon, which I was just talking about. Congratulations once again to the contributors and the mentors who are working towards this project. Then we have Ministry of IT. And Ministry of IT has been focusing on driving multiple projects to improve governance. And congratulations, and once again, to have different contributors who've been identified for this project. And meeties, and thank you to Abhishek ji as well, who was a key driver in getting the Diksha and the Karmayogi projects in C4GT and working very hard towards having a good quality for these projects. Then we have NHA, the National Health Authority, which is transforming the public health sectors with DPGs, including the Unified Health Interface. Congratulations once again to all the contributors who have been selected for the NHA projects. Then we have Reap Benefit, which works with citizens to solve local problems through young citizens. We welcome the contributor and the mentors for reap benefit. Then we have SEHEJ, which is designing and architecting technology building block that power different GovTech solutions in the country. Congratulations once again to the contributors and the mentors working on the projects. Then we have Samagra X, which designs and builds open source population scale DPGs, platforms, and protocol to transform the lives of millions of citizens. Congratulations once again to all the contributors and mentors. There are lots of projects that Samagra X has given, so therefore you'll see a lot of mentors and contributors here as well. Then we have Samnaway Foundation, which is focused on creating products for grassroots organizations. Congratulations once again to the contributors and mentors here. Then we have Shiksha Lokam, which is solving complex societal challenges related to education. And congratulations once again to the mentors and for the contributors for the Shiksha Lokam project. Then we have Talento, which offers services in enterprise applications, data and information management, and innovative mobile and other custom solutions. There are multiple projects that Talento has given, and we congratulate all the mentors and contributors who are participating in C4GT Mentoring Program 2023. Then we have Tech for Dev, which helps not-for-profits seeking technology and data assistance by building open source low-cost technology solutions. We have different mentors and contributors here. Congratulations to you all for participating. Then we have Takeri, which provides cutting-edge technology solutions using open source technologies for governments and private organizations. Congratulate all the mentors and contributors who are here, who've been selected for the projects. Then we have ThoughtWorks, which is a leading global technology consultancy that integrates strategy, design, and software engineering to enable enterprises. We congratulate all the contributors who've been selected for the same, and great to have the mentors as well as part of this program. Then we have Tibble, which is a data engineering and analytics company enabling organizations leveraging data for different use cases. We congratulate the contributors and the mentors who are working towards the C4GT project.
Yeah.
Then we have Trustin.
Or maybe I'm not able to understand. Somebody has to help me.
Trustin, which is a platform that enables companies to create a safe workplace by implementing fair and effective redressal of workplace misconduct. We congratulate the contributors who've been selected.
So, Preet, I think you've gone on mute. Do you want to come out of mute?
Sorry. So we have at the end, we also have certain independent projects which are being driven by independent mentors, really passionate about solving DPG problem statements. And at the end, I want to welcome all the mentors and contributors. Most of you have met us today as well. Great to have you all on board. I also want to thank our knowledge partners, the Digital Public Goods Alliance and Umidya Network India for supporting us in this initiative. And also want to thank GitHub, our community partner, and Samagra, thanks Samagra X, who's the organizers for the C4GT mentoring initiative. Now, moving ahead, we do want to call out that this has started, the mentoring program has started, and we have different people who've come together over the past 4 days. We've conducted a 4-day boot camp, which is aimed at making the contributors ready for the mentoring program. There have been multiple sessions ranging from having the correct mindset to problem solving, to coding best practices, a good overview of how to do project planning, time management, working on GitHub. And we've had industry experts such as Ravi, Prakash, Kiran Nandapillai, Matthew, and Vipul, Ricardo, who've come together to speak to the contributors through different sessions. The coding period starts tomorrow, and we're really excited to have all of you work with us. Now, moving forward, I want to introduce to you the super mentors of C4GT. Now, who are super mentors? Super mentors are experienced professionals in the DPG ecosystem who have designed, architected, and led large-scale implementation of projects. They collectively are a powerhouse of information and experience, and we are excited to have them join us as super mentors for the C4GT community. Now, for the C4GT community, super mentors provide thought leadership via involvement in different C4GT forums such as Discord, events, boot camps, and C4GT super mentors act as guiding light for building the perspectives of the community and to inspire the community to explore more dimensions of the areas that the super mentors are mentoring for. And why these super mentors are really important for our community is because they bring vast experience in the DPG domain. They have a wealth of knowledge, skills, and expertise in a particular domain. And they have the idea of the big picture, which often gets lost in discussions, and they play a important role in maintaining the quality and effectiveness of the mentoring program. So here is our constellation of stalwarts of C4GT 2023 Supermentors. This group of Supermentors needs no introduction. We all go to them for guidance for different domains, and then we have most of the Supermentors here with us today morning as well. I would like to welcome all the Supermentors who are here today with us. It's really exciting to have all the Supermentors and to hear all the Supermentors in different sessions that we've had so far. It's amazing to get their perspective and to hear the insights that they provide for their products and for their domain. It's been really exciting to have worked with you all in the past, and really exciting to have you as part of the C4GT community. What I would now like to do is I would like to call on Supermentors to share a brief 1-minute overview of what has surprised them in C4GT so far, and what expectations do they have from the C4GT cohort this year. We are slowly bringing all the Supermentors here on the spotlight with us. To start with, we have Chakshu. Chakshu, do you want to share a few words?
Sure. I've been truly amazed by the caliber of the students participating in this year, the depth of their understanding, their eagerness to contribute to open source projects. What I saw was that a lot of people were already contributing even before getting selected. So I see an actual intent to actively contribute to open source with or without selection. So that's something that's truly commendable. I've also been pleasantly surprised by the diversity of the ideas that they bring to the table, mostly on the AI front. So some of the ideas I've never seen before, but they work, and it's extremely helpful in expanding this cohort. Right. So this year, I also expect the cohort to push the boundaries of innovation. I hope them to make significant contributions to the respective open source, furthering the overall ecosystem that we are trying to build. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chakshu, and it's great to hear from you. Chakshu was also a mentor last year in the C4GT projects, and continues to be also a guiding light for a lot of the projects that are currently listed on C4GT. Thank you, Chakshu, for those words. I would now like to ask Ravi. Ravi, who's part of FIDE and has been the person designing the beacon protocol and driving a lot of the implementations. And as I was sharing earlier in one of our sessions, a very hard man to pin down as well. so look forward to hear from you, Ravi. Would be great if you could share a little bit about what surprised you and what your expectations are, and anything else that you want to share with the community that's here today.
Hi, Supreet. Thanks for this. And hello, everyone. So I think one of the things that I really liked about C4GT, because I think I've been talking to Rahul for almost the last 2 years now. And what really I liked about C4GT was, I think it brings a very nice structure to, large scale open source contribution, right? I mean, open source is generally, I don't think there is any particular standard or a particular sort of, format in which open source is conducted. So hence, I think this overall sector is generally, while contributing a huge part of, our entire lives in terms of software, but I think generally you see some lack of structure. There are certain pockets where, big organizations are generally for funding open source projects. You see some structure there, but I think what C4GT and Samagra are doing is to sort of, create this one model which can be replicated across the world of open source, not just in C4GT, but outside as well. To be very honest, we at FIDE and in Beacon Open Collective have actually adopted a lot of your methods and methodologies in conducting open source projects as well. So thank you for that. And going forward, and regarding my expectations to what open source, I mean, what C4GT should be doing this year is I think I'm expecting a lot of not just feature additions or bugs that can be fixed in various open source projects, but also deep research coming out from the students over here. Especially, I think in some projects in Beacon, it actually involves you to actually understand fundamentals of not just a technology, but also market, and then come out with innovative solutions thinking from first principles rather than saying, okay, there's a bunch of bugs or issues that needs to be, or fit enhancements to be added to a bunch of projects. Rather than that, I've also focused on providing a little bit of research projects as well, research tasks as well in this project. And I'm hoping that I think this new generation of engineers and so will provide a very fresh perspective of the world around us, and hopefully think outside the box and contribute towards innovative solutions.
Got it. Thank you so much, Ravi, and great to have you with us as a super mentor on this journey. I would now like to ask Vijayashree to share her thoughts on what she has been excited with over the past, on what you've seen so far in C4GT 2023, and then what you feel are your expectations from the C4GT community.
Good morning, everyone. Super excited to see the response on how for the C4GT project itself. Congratulations on that. And I would like to call out, say that Samagra, I think it's a wonderful effort from your side. It's really exciting to see this. To bring this, to me, what stands out is the energy, the response for the C4GT, the youngsters who've come in. It's a big plus from the traditional. We heard the earlier talk, because I come from, I started off with my career with kind of prior, early days of Linux and Unix. So how it has evolved from, over the years to coming into a open source community contribution from a proprietary part of it. I have developed a lot of proprietary products for the corporate. Now the whole paradigm shift into this and seeing the response to this is very impressive. And thank you, Samagra, for creating this platform where, as Ravi was saying earlier, there is a system. Everybody wants to contribute, everybody wants to do, but there has to be a platform which enables people, especially the students and youngsters who have the knowledge, who want to contribute. This becomes a wonderful forum for them to come and contribute. And with the most important thing is it is with a very focused effort, right, towards an end goal, which is very meaningful, moving towards actually becoming a reality. I think that is what stands out to me. And looking forward, what I look forward to in this is for the community growth, how we will sustain this, grow this, so that it becomes a de facto and an opportunity for people who want to come and participate and actually build up their skills. One is build their skills, contribute, and so that we start building up the DPGs, to put it in a very simple way, the DPGs, but to grow the whole community itself, a contributing community. And so we can leverage the skills which are spread across and not leave them in silos. I think that's what I would look at for.
Thank you so much, Vijayashree. And just for everybody, Vijayashree is the CTO at Shiksha Locum, and there are some very exciting projects that Shiksha Locum is working on, which are part of the C4GT mentoring cohort as well. Thank you so much for the words, Vijayashree. Great to have you. I'm now going to ask Ashwin, who is the founder of Take3 Technologies, to share what he thinks about the C4GT community and what are his expectations, and then what you've been surprised by over the past few months. Yeah, Ashwin, sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah. So what I've been surprised by, I think I'd probably add to what Ravi said, surprised by the depth of solutions proposals that have been coming out. I mean, a lot of them, rather than looking at it from the lens of, you want to build this feature, solve these bugs, they've been actually looking at it, and they've also been adopting the entire DPI, DPG kind of philosophy. So rather than looking at it as I'm building this feature for this product, they're looking at how can this product be used to solve population scale problems. So the entire bit about building tech for better governance, I think I see that the proposals are really bringing that out, which is, I think, phenomenal. That's definitely one. The second bit is, I think, the program scaling 10x, I think that's been a super thing for me. I mean, last year we did roughly 10 to 12 contributors. This year we have 100 plus. So I think that just kind of reinforces the fact that I think a lot of people have been talking about of how eager is this community, how eager are they to contribute and be a part of this entire DPI, DPG building. So I think while probably 100 have been selected, there's probably 10x more proposals that might have come in. So I think it's amazing how this pool of youngsters is eager to contribute. So that's been another highlight. And I think what I'd like to see this year is I think the contributors kind of continuing post their contribution. So being part of, I mean, not just having C4GT as the duration of their contribution, or actually being part of the respective communities and continuing to contribute and build those DPGs. That would definitely be one kind of large expectation from this pool. So good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much for those words, Ashwin, and really excited to have you on board as well. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion that you'll be engaging with on our community as we go forward in this journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I would now like to invite Anand, who's the platform architect at Sanketika, to share a few words about what, Anand, you've seen so far in the community and what you find exciting and what are some of the expectations from the cohort.
Yeah, thanks, Supreet. So it's actually really exciting to see such talented group of people coming together and actually focusing on contributing to open source. It's one of the biggest initiatives in India, I believe. So I'm really excited to understand what the expectations are from the contributors of the C4GT while we work together and bring about a change in the open source ecosystem in India. Really excited to see the amount of talent that is evolving. I mean, I can't even believe that these people are just about to graduate from undergrad, and the depth of their proposals. It talks a lot about the talent that is still budding in India, which has not come out completely. So my expectations from this community would be similar to what Ravi had proposed. Yeah, building features is one of the things into open source communities, but I would like them to go beyond and actually put together the part of the puzzle that will solve a bigger solution in different domains, let's say healthcare or agriculture or even education. So I would like them to propose solutions for a larger problem that needs to be solved, more than that's just building out features. So that'll be really cool to understand. So it'll be a learning process for us as well, working with them to bring about all these solutions for larger societal problems. So really excited. I hope we get a lot of learning from this as well.
Thank you so much, Anand. Thanks for sharing that. I would now like to ask Matthew. So Matthew, would be great if you can also share what your expectation of the community are, but also if you can add a little bบof flavor about what you are specifically looking forward for some of the projects that you are seeing on C4GT, and anything that you've seen so far in the projects, and if any particular outcome you're looking at in the projects that you are closely monitoring as well. We'll get to get some flavor on that as well.
Right. I want to echo Ashwin and Anand. I'm really happy to see the kind of interest that is there to contribute to open source projects, which are of national importance as well. Going through the proposals, they looked really well written and well thought through. So I'm really looking forward to this, and it was a real challenge to select the best proposal amongst many really good ones, right? I'm really hoping that the contributors are able to add the right kind of value. And one message I want to leave to the contributors, or rather one expectation, is that most of the projects you would see are projects where, which have either scaled to a pan-India level or are in the process of scaling. So I would say that, blur the boundaries of front ends and back ends and data. And it is important to realize that when you work on a platform that has to scale, it is important to understand the importance of, the structure of the underlying infra, the DevOps and automation practices, and also the data engineering mindset. So I'm just hoping that all the contributors would really blur their boundaries and not be restricted to their areas or stacks, and then think across these lines. At the same time, I also want to ask the contributors to start questioning what exists. So do not assume that what exists is the best solution out there. You can always try to, question what exists and try to make it better or maybe simpler. So that would be my message to all the contributors.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing this. And we welcome Karthik. Karthik, great to have you. You were there last year as well. Great to have you this year as well. Would be good to sort of understand, Karthik, from you, what you are seeing from last year and this year. So what are you seeing evolve? Would be great to get your perspective there. The other would also be helpful to understand for the kind of projects you are looking at. What is something that you're really wanting to solve, through this community now and also going forward, because you are definitely seeing, cohort that is coming together. So what do you think is the opportunity for an organization like yourselves to sort of go forward, with what's the opportunity that you see with this community going forward as well?
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Sukhpreet. And from last year to this year, I think I can see the exponential growth in the C4GT. I think so. Last year, I think we are at 7 mentors. Now, I think more than 30 plus actually. So that is one thing, like how C4GT is helping the students and the people who are thinking they want to contribute for open source. So one thing I want to suggest all the contributors is, so as Matthew and Anand said, like don't stick to their nominations where they sent and what they have selected. So try to check that all the architecture, how the problems, like how they have given the solutions to these problems, and better like understanding that and try to implement apply that to their problems. That is one thing I want to suggest. And one more thing is like they should not be stick to their own problems what they have selected. So try to explore other problems also, and like how they are solving and how they, and if they have helping, they can help to others also. So that is one thing I would suggest. Yeah.
Got it. No, thank you so much, Karthik, and great to have you with us. There were a few Supermentors who could not join us today, but they send their best wishes for everybody in the community. Before we close, I do want to briefly touch upon one important aspect, which is maybe if Ravi you can share. There are a lot of over the past 4 days we've had a boot camp where a lot of questions have come up on how do you sort of think about the scope of the DPG, or what are the number of things that we need to think about to come up with a DPG. So it will be really helpful if you can share an insight on, as a super mentor who's looking at protocol and helping people, look at how do you implement protocol, design protocol. There is also a lot of domain, there's a lot of ground to cover to actually design the protocol, get a network moving around it, then implementing it, then driving policy around it. So what would be your guidance, as a super mentor for the community also, to say how do you sort of identify the problem space for a DPG?
I think this is what I was just answering Pawan on the chat right now. I think just repeating whatever I said just a couple of days back. I think anything that solves for a grassroots problem at large scale can be considered DPGs. And one important thing to note is DPGs are not necessarily software, right, or platforms, right? There can be content, that, like for example, the Creative Commons licenses, right? That's a form of a DPG. It protects the rights of a lot of artists and content creators, right, from any sort of copyrights or any sort of plagiarism or anything like that, right? Similarly, there are softwares, right? A lot of things that actually solve for, like for example, Aadhaar. It just solves for one thing. It tells you whether you are who you claim you are or not. Right. Similarly, there are other types of DPGs like standards, specifications, more specifically, like Beacon, that basically tell you how, if you design your system in this way, you can become part of a larger ecosystem of other platforms, right? Basically, you can become part of a network, right? To identify sort of core problems on qualifying something as a DPG. I think this is something that's generally a rule of thumb that we use at FIDE a lot, is to ask 5 whys, right? It's called the 5 why method, that you see a symptom of a larger problem that we see. For example, let's say traffic in Bangalore, right? It's not that, okay, now let's start solving for traffic, right? That's not the answer to it. If you want to take a DPG or a DPI approach to solving this problem, to ask, okay, why is there traffic? Okay, probably there is traffic because of reason A, right? That probably will be a symptom of a deeper problem. Then you again ask, why is this, problem A appearing? Then you get problem, B and C and D, and you keep recursively asking. It is generally observed that around by the 5th why, 5th to 6th why, you sort of, get the core problem that is sort of creating this, becoming the core set of problems. I would not say a single problem, but the core set of problems that is leading to such large scale symptoms, right? And if you solve for even one of them, you have a DPG, right? So I think that's the general principle, and that's what we try to do in backend, is that let's solve the core problem of interoperability in transactions, right? That was a core problem which resulted as a symptom of observing larger effects, like, for example, hey, why is it so difficult? Even if I have access to so many applications and apps and platforms, why am I still getting a problem, facing a problem trying to find a cab, right? Backend started with actually solving for mobility, right? When we sort of realized that, okay, we have solved mobility, we went deeper and said, oh, I think we can abstract it to all commerce, right? So I think it's important to start with a single problem. Don't try to be so abstract and start from trying to, okay, I will solve the entire the root cause of whatever life or something like that. Don't start from there. I would say start from a very specific industry sector problem, solve for that, and then once you have solved for that, keep in mind large scale thinking, cross sector thinking. For example, hey, if I'm solving this for mobility, can this also be applied for healthcare? Let's say if I'm solving something for discovering mobility, how is mobility related to healthcare? Maybe can I also solve this for ambulances? Can I also solve this for logistics? So you abstract further, trying to incorporate more and more sectors into the same kind of thinking, and see how many cross sector problems can you solve through the same solution. So that's how backend was solved. It was not done overnight. It was a process. It took almost a year and a half to abstract the specifications, continuously stress test this against not just real world but also wacky use cases, right? Like, for example, how come, let's say tomorrow, I mean, we generally used to talk about what if tomorrow drones are delivering food, or what if there is warp drive invented, or what if there are hyperloops, right? Will it still will backend still remain the same, or do we have to modify backend? And that's how you keep on arriving at the final solution. And if you ask me, it is still not complete, right? We are continuously, it's never going to be complete. It's just going to be a continuous process of iterating, getting to the grassroots problem, and ultimately arriving at a solution.
No, thank you so much, Ravi, for sharing that, and thank you all the Supermentors for joining us in the C4GT journey. Just as you've seen right now, we will have lots of insights that all of us can learn from your experiences while we are working on products as a community. And then we look forward to having you all on multiple forums at multiple C4GT forums going forward. And thank you once again for joining us and for supporting the C4GT community and being an integral part of it. Thank you, everybody. I will now hand over to my colleague, Nitin, to take us through the second and a very interesting panel discussion lined up for you all. Thank you so much, everybody, and over to you, Nitin.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sukhpreet, and thanks all the Supermentors again. It was really fantastic hearing from you, and you can't just even imagine the amount of learning that the community can go through and benefit from your experiences as part of the program. So, and also like the growth, the overview of 2023 and the scale and the growth is really outstanding. And I know a lot of hard work has gone into it from the team overall and all our partners. So really commendable job on that too. And that is all showing. So off to a good start. I would now like to transition into our sort of last session for the event as well, but not least by any chance. And then a very interesting one, which is on focusing on scaling DPG communities, experiences, and way forward. And I have with me for this a really distinguished set of panelists who bring a wealth and diversity of experience in this space with them from very different perspectives. I have with me Leah Gimple. Leah leads is a senior policy manager at Digital Public Goods Alliance. She's also a lecturer at one of the most prestigious public policy schools, Harty School, and also a board member at the Open Knowledge Foundation, Germany. So welcome, Leah, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Our next panelist for today is Kriti Mittal. Kriti is an entrepreneur in residence at the Omidyar Network, India. She has previously served as a policy advisor with the technical support unit at National Urban Livelihoods Mission in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and has many more credits to her name as well. But Kriti, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Nitin. Excited to be here.
Wonderful. Finally, we have Karan MV. Karan is a senior manager at GitHub, where he leads international developer relations, DevRel as we know it. He has previously also been a manager at Developer Experience and Automation Anywhere, and has also served as an outreach manager at DigitalOcean. A pleasure to have you with us, Karan. A very warm welcome.
Thanks, Nitin. Great to be here.
Wonderful. And really, to all of you, thanks not just for joining us, but also being our strong supporters and believers in this journey too. All of you represent organizations who are our partners, ONI and DPGA being our knowledge partners, and GitHub being our community partner. So thanks for that too, and look forward to really hearing your perspective on this interesting topic. We kind of got the big picture in the first panel. We heard about the actual mechanics and the details of 2023 setup, and a lot of expectations that the Supermentors have from this community. I would really love to hear from you guys in terms of the expertise on how do really we make scale DPG communities, right? So I'd like to start with maybe a common question, and then we can do a little bit of a round robin too, right? But the common question would be from your individual perspectives of the organizations that you represent, right? An alliance, a funding organization, a community platform. How do you see the role of developer communities sort of in the wider DPG movement, and how it has evolved over the last 3-5 years, and where do you see it going? How critical is it from where you are, the perspective that you bring in? Maybe Leah, you could start, and Kriti, and then come.
Yes, thanks so much, Nitin. And I think that's a very fundamental question, really. And maybe we start by looking quickly at how the DPG ecosystem evolves before we look into the community of developers. And in general, I think we all know that open source has a really colorful and long history, but the concept of DPGs just evolved recently. So let's say in the last 3 to 5 years, perhaps, DPGs, or Digital Public Goods Alliance as such, was set up in 2019. So we are 4 years old by now. And this also shows that, that we started at a point where we still had to find our role, and where we had to see how can we build on the experience of the open source community and transfer this to the digital public goods space. And what we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years really is a tremendous growth in this section. As a DPGA, we help to help the discoverability of DPGs, for instance. We also help the development and to coordinate the funding. And what we really see is that the number of products that are registered on the DPG registry, that the DPGA is a custodian for, increased significantly over the last 4 years we've been there. So for instance, in 2021, just to give you a number, we had around 70 products on the registry, and by now it's 150, and it's growing steadily. And what we also see is that more and more DPGs really are submitted for AI models, which is also, due to the developments in the AI field, I guess, but that's really exciting as well. And what we also see is that there's more interest from implementers, more demand for DPGs, as well as that funders and the wider DPG ecosystem realized what the value of a DPG can be to help attain these sustainable development goals. And coming now to the developers community, I think what is really noteworthy is that traditionally the community is a bit undervalued, but we can't give enough value to the community, because it really is the main driving force for growth and development of a DPG, as well as for long-term sustainability. And traditionally, especially if you're coming more from the international development perspective, such as the DPGA, I mean, we are anchored in the United Nations. The developer community is a bit forgotten sometimes, but I think this is changing. This notion that we really need the developers to drive something forward. And yeah, I'm curious to expand more on this question, but I also would like to give the word to my co-panelists.
Yeah, maybe I can come in. I think, just building on, what Leah started off as sort of the explanation of how the DPI and DPG ecosystem has evolved in the last just handful of years, right? I think we're seeing an abundance of DPGs now. We are seeing interest from a number of countries to build DPI, on DPGs. And all of them have sort of very different origin stories and different sort of organizational models behind them, right? We are seeing government-owned DPI and DPGs like the ones that Ministry of IT and National Health Authority have contributed to C4GT. And we're looking at a number of philanthropically supported DPGs like MOSIP, the modular open source ID platform. And then we're also now seeing DPGs that have, in some sense, emerged from open source communities or nonprofits like Glyphic, which is also, I think, participating in C4GT. And I think across these sort of categories, right, in the first two, I think the open source community so far has not really had a chance to or an opportunity to engage very deeply, even though I think from the DPG builders side, there has been an acknowledgement that we need to build and grow the community. I think they found it challenging to actually do it, right? And so I think C4GT really provides, I think, almost an unprecedented kind of a platform to bring together the open source community and the DPG builders and, connect the dots and, create the sort of bridge between the two so that the community can really, participate in this growing movement. In terms of the role of the community, I almost think of it, and I fully agree with Leah that it's absolutely central and a driving force in the DPG movement. And I think of it in sort of three, big buckets, right? The first is on the adoption piece, right? A DPG is only as valuable as, the level to which it's being adopted, the number of sort of innovations and use cases that are being sort of built on top and that it's being leveraged for, right? And that's really where the community plays a critical role. I think the second is just helping to sort of improve and maintain the core code base of the DPG or even for DPIs. And the third, I think, really interesting one that isn't talked about much is the role of this community in oversight. I almost think of, the way you have a civil society for physical public goods. I almost think of this community as like a civil society for digital public goods, right? Where it goes beyond just reporting and fixing bugs to really sort of being, being a part of transparency and accountability of DPGs and DPI. So I think that's really for me, one of the overlooked dimensions of the community's role as well.
Wonderful. No, I think that's a great way of thinking about it in those buckets. Karan?
Yeah, I think, if you just look at developer communities or even open source, right? Typically, it always has been something around developers being a part of the community in something that they use and something that they benefit from as well, right? And that has always been in the space of software, that has been in the space of developer tools, etc. So the way that I really see and excited about is if you take that to a whole different level of DPGs and DPIs, it means that now developers can actually be a part of a community and contribute to something that not just their community of developers are going to get impacted, but citizens in large. However, it requires a different mindset and thought of approach. However, I feel the central part is that you get the power to actually contribute to something that not just your profession, but a whole large, set of citizens also can benefit. And the good thing is that thought process is evolving in the space of DPGs and not just the other traditional ways where open source is being used. Of course, there are enterprises who are thinking about open source and communities. There are startups who are thinking about it. But good to see some of this some of these areas and domains where communities are very new and working directly with developers, like the Code for GovTech program, versus working with an organization of developers trying to get something achieved. I think that is really interesting, because it almost gets you the complete and raw power of open source to go and work on something, and makes almost interactions much more flat rather than very, very hierarchical when it comes to working on some of these projects.
Yeah. I think so. The key difference being it's not just about code that you use; it's also about use yourself, but for everyone, and the speed of sort of interaction, collaboration, and the flatness of the hierarchy are key things that make it special. Wonderful. Good. So I think maybe I'll direct my next question, Leah, to you. Like, again, from an international point of view, this is like a digital public commons, and not just in a country, but across the world, right? That's almost the custodian role that you were referring to. Would love to hear from you, like, in some, aside from just helping develop communities, what kind of strategies you think about in terms of, like, to address the challenge of sustainability of this model in long term, right? How do we make sure in the long term this model succeeds and grows and the commons are really cared for, right? How do you think about it? I think that would be a great thing for us to hear from you.
Yes, I think that's one of the fundamental questions, really. And we did some research in 2021 with the UN Global Pulse, and asked basically developers what their main pain points are in financing and sustainability, were at the top. So really an important question. And I think there are several avenues to this. First of all, I mean, and again, coming from this, international development perspective, we need to look at donor funding differently, because a lot of DPGs are funded through donors or philanthropies in the first place. And we need to, well, first of all, see this not as an only source of funding, but really think about diversifying funding streams. And traditionally, if a DPG sits with a foundation, for instance, they are more prone to, apply for grants and not so much look into like the business models and how the business model can generate additional revenue streams. Mm-hmm. And the other way around, it goes for products that sit rather, with a private sector company. So for instance, BANMI, which sits at ThoughtWorks, that would be one example. And these products are more prone to look at business models and funding streams, but not so much to donor funding and, applying for grants. And we need to unify these different funding streams in the first place. So really to think about the combination of different possibilities to gain revenues for long-term funding. And specifically to donor funding or funding through multilateral organizations, I think it's important to basically push the narrative in two directions. First of all, to get across that core funding, so not funding implementations, not funding new features, but core funding, that is fundamental for the sustainability of a product. And secondly, to look at funding streams from these players specifically, also again from a more comprehensive perspective, because mostly these funding streams comes from different sector budgets. So you have a budget for health, you have a budget for education, you have a budget for agriculture, but we need to think about cross-sectoral funding streams from these organizations. And then I think it's also about how you set up your product as such. So really to look out for that the funding you need to maintain the core is as low as possible, so that you actually don't need so much funding in the first place, but then can diversify. And I see donor funding, for instance, also as a way to de-risk investments for others. So if you have a long-term funder, a long-term donor who's supporting your product, others may come in more easily because they see that this product will be around for a long time and it's worth investing in it. And thirdly, I think it's also worth exploring really alternative, innovative models, such as, for instance, custodian models, where a number of DPG share like some administrative resources together, such as, licensing advice or hosting services and such, so that not every single product needs to look out for its own, but that we create these custodian models where we can bundle several DPGs who can then tap into services more easily. But also look at joint funds, for instance, or three-sided markets where you bring together implementers, technologists, and funders. And just on the last part, in terms of institutional funding, I think I see a certain shift in how foundational technologies are seen, also from a public perspective. At least here in Europe, I know a few examples where really the government is stepping up to finance core funding. So in Germany, for instance, where I come from, the Sovereign Tech Fund is one of these examples where really the government put out resources to fund the maintenance and work on the core of really foundational infrastructure that is needed everywhere. And we need to shift this narrative in this direction.
Got it. I think yeah, those 3-4 different avenues. Kriti, would you also want to share some of your thoughts on from an Omidyar network perspective? What's the core thesis or thought here that how can this movement be best supported? Is it about investing in individual DPGs? Is it more, or which have more scale for impact, or is it more foundational investments? How is ONI thinking about it?
Yeah. No, I think first of all, agree with the whole overview of the DPI, DPG funding landscape that Leah shared. I think particularly the issue of a lot of philanthropic funding being siloed into sort of sectors really resonates, right? I hear this from a lot of colleagues in philanthropic organizations, because they struggle to sort of put DPI, DPG funding into one of the sort of buckets in which the philanthropy is to sort of align it with the larger strategic objectives of their respective philanthropic organizations. So I think breaking out of that is really important. I think it's already started to happen. We are seeing a lot more capital being committed to towards DPI, DPGs. From ON India's perspective, when we first started thinking about this, I think back in 2019, right, DPI, DPGs were not so mainstream. In India, we had sort of, the Aadhaar and UPI success stories, but the sort of sector-specific DPI, DPGs are a more sort of recent phenomena, right? And I think even globally, just this understanding of what is a DPI, what is a DPG, it's only now starting to become a little bit better understood, right? Even today, though, I think the missing gap, and that's where, I think there's a missing gap even amongst philanthropies that are supporting DPIs and DPGs already, is on sort of the non-tech side, right? For example, this work that C4GT is doing. How do you build community? How do you sustain community? And then on the governance side as well, the larger questions of how should DPI be governed well, or how should DPGs be governed? Is there a community role in governance? Or is governance entirely the role of governments? And then, questions around data governance that intersect closely with DPI, DPG governance. I think those are the pieces that are still not really mainstream in the discourse or in sort of, the funding sort of strategies of both philanthropies and governments. So I think, yeah, would love to see more attention on those.
Yeah. So sector, sort of cross-sector, foundational, horizontal sort of needs of the system. What's the right way to sort of fund those going forward, right? And yeah, that's right. Karan, maybe if you have anything to add on that question too, but otherwise we could also, let me just pause there first. Then I have a question for you from a GitHub perspective too.
Got it. Yeah, I think one of the things that we're thinking about is because open source is one of the key aspects of how DPING is being thought about, how we can support, make that be successful, both from the end of the project itself and the community, and also also the contributor side of things. There are I feel a couple of ways how some of these projects and communities could improve, but happy to dive into that deeper later on.
Yeah. No, I think let's get into that. That was sort of the flavor of my other question for you. Like from your experience on GitHub, right, and which is in some sense the home of open source, right? You must have seen many communities being formed on it, or sort of some communities grow into big ones and some wither and can't sustain themselves, right? I'm sure being at that place, you would have looked at it from a very data lens as well, right? There would be a long tail and there would be a distribution of the graph and whatnot, right? but also like if you could share some of your sort of insights and observations from there, and more importantly, what are the kind of challenges you see that communities run into? Because we're starting out a community here, so would love to hear like what are some of the typical challenges that these run into, and if there is some best practice that you have for us to share with us, that would be fantastic.
Right. A couple of things, and please keep me honest on time because I can go on for this for ages. The first thing that I really have noticed is that for any community, especially on the developer side, to be successful, right? The key part is the member experience, irrespective of the kind of community that's out over there. And if you're specifically talking of a developer community or an open source community, what is really the contributor experience or the developer experience in participating in that? We've seen that really is a key differentiator between a project that's very successful when it comes to contributions versus even a successful project as something being used by end user, but not so good when it comes to how developers and contributors are doing it. And the main underlying reason and the factor is that the open source community, even though they probably associate to certain projects, right, have a very underlying way of working. And it's very, very different compared to how, say, startups work or how enterprises work, because it's a very global, asynchronous, and there are some unwritten rules and principles of how developers interact and communicate in the open source. Especially when it comes to DPIs and DPGs, right, is that while operating in a similar space, and if you're wanting to really tap into the expertise of developers and help through that, you'd have to think about it from that lens and not from a lens of how this DPING in open source is probably going to operate in an enterprise or a startup. So you'd have to put yourself into the shoes of a developer or a contributor who is working not just on this project, but also working on, say, multiple other developer tools, etc. Right? So contributor experience forms a very key factor of looking at communities. So that's the first thing. The second thing also is largely about the feedback loop. I think that's a very, very important aspect which needs to be tackled. The feedback loop itself could be a very, very strong incentive. And what I mean by that is, say right now, if anyone in the developer community or open source is contributing and working on something, right, they know when they are going to see that being put to use, all right, because they can see that there is a certain release process. This is when it's available, etc. And that is somewhat of a very soft sense of satisfaction that developers and open source contributors get, because they know when their work is actually going to be put to use, right? Kind of figuring that out might be a little bit hard with DPI and DPGs, because once it's built, you might not know when that will be used or how and where, etc. So figuring out that feedback loop is important, because then it gives not just a sense of satisfaction, but also helps prove to a lot of the community contributors that what you're building is actually now available to all of these citizens here, or it is being used here, etc. So that's kind of baked in and already there within the open source community, but adapting that for the DPG communities is important to really showcase that, hey, it's not just about the code that you do or some documentation that you write or mentorship, etc., but all of this is actually starting to show impact within whatever you have done. So I would see these two are really key things, and could be very, very strong driving factors for communities as well as developers. And in a place like India, where we have so many developers, and in fact India is the second largest on GitHub with 10 million developers. So if you just really look at the scale and possible impact of developers being able to contribute to something that can impact population scale projects, right, is really, really huge.
Great. Yeah, I think the developer experience and closing the feedback loop, is what I heard. And again, I think this is something we have been thinking about. This is more like an open question we would invite from all of you. One of the hypotheses is this visibility and acknowledgement of the contributions, that are made by the contributor. And so that's one. And the second one is it's ultimately a market matching as well, in some sense, right? It's a platform where you need contributors, but you also need problem statements, right? And the ease of how well are they structured so that the contributors can easily discover, right? So those are the two sort of key hypotheses we have. But if I would love to hear from your experiences in this space or in your other spaces as well. Any tips, things, thoughts you have, how should think about the importance of visibility and what could be done more about it to, in this context, increase that?
So I'll probably take, first stab at it. So there are, again, I just want to go back to how the open source community operates, right? When it comes to just recognition itself, and I want to talk about it first generally, is that there are certain ways how a lot of open source communities recognize their contributors, right? They have their own set of ladders and specific teams formed in terms of, okay, when you start as a contributor, and what does your journey look like in becoming almost like a decision maker or a leader for that specific project. So putting out that ladder, not similar to an organizational ladder, but in terms of what are the kind of contributions expected and what is the kind of impact that you can create, will help a whole lot of developers and the community really understand as to how they can give back and then grow and be recognized. All right, that's where you would see a whole lot of words like, okay, I'm a maintainer, I am a technical lead for this, or I am a sponsor, a backer, or anything else, right? It indicates where they are in that specific journey or ladder in terms of giving back. The second part also is really around how all of the contributors can share more about their specific work and impact. And then also all of these projects really figuring out a way to not just incentivize, but recognize them. The reason why I mentioned it has to be specific to a DPI or G is because what counts as a good contribution could be very, very different depending on the scale, right? For example, just one small feature for a DPI or G which doesn't see a whole lot of contributions could be a major impact versus another project which gets a whole lot of contributions, but it gets a very key feature which or a major bug that was found or whatever it is, would mean very different, right? So there are a whole lot of systems out over there. There are means of say automated badging, automated credentials, even probably using something like Sunbird, etc., which can be rolled out. These forming a part of an individual developer's way of showcasing their contributions. To some extent, it requires a whole lot of participation from industry as well, because if enterprises or if people who are employing all of these developers recognize that this is a major contribution that they have done, it also helps the industry. They themselves recognize their employers in a different way. So it has a whole different form of network effects, but fundamentally it comes down to one. A project, a DPI or a DPG, understanding what is the value of contributions and how they want to recognize and incentivize. And second is, figuring out a suitable way or a system of showcasing this, not just to the contributor, but to everyone else.
Got it. Kritik, Leah, anything to add? Or maybe on the other side as well, Leah, being more closer to the DPG builders, what are some typical challenges you hear from them in terms of their desire to get open source contributions or more, and which they are unable to, maybe, or even broader?
Yeah, I can elaborate a bit more on that, because as I said, we did this survey in 2021 where we asked specifically for the needs of DPG builders. And one thing that came out is that they really have challenges in tapping into expert knowledge or finding the right people to contribute. And that's not necessarily only tech knowledge, but it also stretches to areas such as intellectual property, for instance, licensing, governance, UI and UX, and other topics as well, translations, for instance. So I think a sensible first step for a product is really to know what your needs are at a specific point in time, and then be able to communicate what you need from the community to help connect to the right people. And then I think taking a step back, it's super important to start early on creating a path for meaningful contributions, which means to look at the governance of your product, to develop a code of conduct for contributors so that they know that this is an area that is taken care of, that everyone has a good experience in contributing. And then also to have staff to review contributions, right? Because even if you have a good developer community, you need someone who actually has a time to look over these aspects. And of course, I think an important part to make the most out of this is really to have a product roadmap for the development of your of the tool that you are developing. And if you have enough resources, also a developer guide, so to really guide people through the process of contributing. And of course, this depends a little bit on the maturity of the product. I mean, if you are a big product such as MOSAP or DHIS2, I mean, you have this all set up, of course. If you are a product with a maintainer community of 2 or 3 people, I mean, this might look a bit different. But I think what is really foundational is to start out with at least some of it, and keep in mind that while you are growing, to develop the other aspects of the governance structure as well. And then I think what Karen already elaborated on really is the recognition of contributions. And here I would like to specifically also focus on female contributors, because in the space, I think we see a great gender imbalance. So it really is important to also look at this from this angle and elevate female contributors in that field. And there could be mentorship programs, there can be support programs such as C4GT, which is a really great initiative to build a community around this. But yeah, looking at some of these aspects specifically, I think can really help build also inclusive spaces for everyone.
I think, yeah, very, very crucial point on the inclusivity of spaces too, as we look forward to this. Now, I think great points. We're kind of coming towards the end of it. I think just I'll end with again an open question for all of you. But I think just summarizing some of the key points. I think in terms of that, community are clearly central, right, and critical for this DPG movement. There is the opportunity for funding to be more directed towards not just specific coding things, but also which are more horizontal and cross-sectoral and benefit all. Ultimately, it is the contributor experience and the feedback loops that really make or break a community, but the responsibility is joint, right? The responsibility is with the organization in creating projects as well, in terms of developer code of conduct, how well it is structured, how the roadmap is shared, how the feedback loop is closed, etc. All of those ingredients go into making a successful community. But I think that's did that sound like a fair summary, or anything you would want to add on it?
Yeah, Nitin, maybe one thing to add here, right? I think recognition is one part of the broader sort of contributor experience. I think there's this larger piece on community culture, which comprises of many different things, including the diversity, question that Leah spoke about. But also many other aspects of sort of there being the spirit of collaboration and, positivity in the community culture. And I think that's something, with this kind of effort, it can't just be the responsibility of, say the Samagra team or the C4GT organizers, right? So I really, really hope that, this brilliant cohort and the larger community on Discord, that many people from within the community also, take up the role of creating and maintaining that positive community culture, which I think will be really important to sort of sustain this and, grow the community in the long run.
Yeah. No, I think that absolutely. And this kind of hints at my kind of common question as well. Like, what would be some of, like, for the cohort that is participating, what would be your advice as they get into this 2-month period for the mentoring program, but hopefully also a longer term association? Because the intention is also to have a longer term community engagement, which is beyond just the 2 months, right? Develop this as a skill, as a muscle that and as something that they fall in love with and continue doing beyond on both sides. So any words of advice for the cohort, and also maybe your 1 word or 2 words on your expectations and hopes from the C4GT program as well. And that would be the concluding question. The expectations, hopes from C4GT, and advice for the cohort.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can go first on this. So in terms of hopes and expectations, right? I first of all hope the community grows. I think it's already really sizable, and it's incredible the amount of effort that's gone in already. But I hope it grows further and sustains. I hope it becomes global. I think, the DPGA and all of the sort of global DPGs on their registry, are also probably eager to participate in this kind of effort. And I hope that in the coming years, many global DPGs become part of this effort as well. And, folks from other countries join the community as well. I hope there are a lot more learnings exchanges. I think, the experience of this cohort and this first large group of mentors will be really valuable for subsequent cohorts, and the larger community that isn't part of the mentoring program as well. So I hope this serves as a platform for learning exchange. I hope, there was some discussion on funding models, right? I hope there are new types of funding models that emerge here beyond the sort of stipend-based model that's being experimented with here, where, DPG builders and other sort of investors in DPG are able to finance the contributors, the open source contributors, in some kind of more sustainable way. Then, of course, I hope we have a lot more women, joining the community, as well as people from other, other sort of groups that are not currently represented. And then I hope there's a lot more conversations in this community on sort of the non-tech layers of how DPGs should be governed better, and how, community management and culture should be done. So those are sort of the long list of, hopes and expectations. Yeah.
Yeah, let me add maybe one thing to this long list of hopes and dreams for this effort, and that is to really convey this narrative how important DPGs are in the space to attract funding. I think that is really crucial, and I think the G20 actually provides a really great backdrop to do this. And just the scale of your community, I think, is a very good foundation to do this. So everyone who's contributing should also talk about this. To whoever you meet, talk about what you're doing, talk about the project that you are supporting, and that you're actually helping to solve real life problems with your contributions.
Yeah.
Right. So a couple of things that I hope C4GT is able to do is all of the contributors who are there contributing to the DPI DPGs. I hope they're able to give feedback back to the projects based on the practices they would have seen with some of the other open source projects, because I think one aspect is about, okay, how can contributors help with this specific feature or this specific area, but generally also they being the first cohort of people to get feedback from directly in terms of how can we make this better for others, not just in terms of features and things like that, but what was the challenge when you started working on this, and how can we make this experience in terms of contributing and giving back better. So I hope all of the contributors are able to give that feedback back, and the projects are able to understand that. I'm very sure that that will be very, very similar when it comes to all of the projects, and that can itself become a knowledge base at the end of the program that could help guide a whole lot of other DPI NG projects as well, which could be a shared learning, like how Kriti mentioned. That could be a good way of letting all of the other projects know that within these cohort, this was some of the learnings in terms of how the organizations and the projects themselves can help make it better, as well as for the contributors. Similar to how Leah mentioned, right? So I just wrote a quick note on this on chat as well, is that I think, one of the very good subjective and almost like a rule of thumb that I have experienced when a community becomes successful is when the members of the community become vocal and say that I am a part of the community, rather than a DPI or a DPG saying we have a community of so many people, right? So, I hope all of the contributors are able to share about all of this good work that's happening and about their work that's happening to all of the other peers and a whole lot of other organizations, so that they also get inspired to be a part of this program and contribute to the growth of all of this DPI and DPGs and make it sustainable. To Nitin, what you mentioned, because a key factor for successful communities is that contributors keep coming back and are invested in time and effort in helping make that grow, and it's not just a one-time thing, right? So I hope the contributors see this as the first starting point, making use of all of the mentors and the super mentors and the mentoring program itself to just understand more about the project and the processes, and really help make things a lot more bigger and special. And not that it's not possible. I've seen a whole lot of within the open source community, a whole lot of decision makers and leaders who started off trying to fix one specific pain point, trying to scratch their own itch, and then understood that, hey, there is a whole lot more that we can do, and becoming a leader and a decision maker. So I really hope that a whole lot of the contributors are able to rise up to that level technically, or even when it comes to the contributor experience or the governance part, in being able to not just pass on the baton, but actually hold the flag and lead the way.
That's great. And I think that's a very aspirational kind of way to kind of look at it, and absolutely the right way. It's the start of a long-term relationship here, right? And not just about the program. Now, I think so we have some time, so absolutely happy to take some more questions from the chat. I know you already answered one question, I think, Karan, but if folks have other questions, please feel free to also ask right now. I think I'm being told that there is a question and answer thing that we have. Yeah, I think the how to gauge the engagement level question you have already sort of addressed.
Nitin, earlier, when the earlier panel was going on, there was a question from one of the contributors.
Yeah.
How do you start to think of a DPG solution for, specific things like, a flood-prone area where people are not able to access subsidies, etc. Right? I think one really important thing that we haven't spoken about is, the overlap between the user community and the builder community here, right? The folks who are contributing code and the folks who are ultimately using the DPGs are now overlapping. And I think that's really important to, work towards much more localized, much more sort of citizen-centric kind of solution building on top of DPGs. And so I would also really encourage this cohort to, try to go out there and speak to end users. So for example, if you're working on a health stack project, right, try and speak to the actual people in the hospitals and, the sort of end users who are people who have started to get their health IDs, etc. And similarly for the other projects as well. And, think about it, even if your code doesn't sit on the user interface side, I think it's important to have that perspective.
Absolutely. No, I think thanks for bringing that up. There's another similar question on somebody asking, like, how do you make social impact products on open source? What are the benefits of converting your data and process management proprietary SaaS as DPGs, right? Like, Any thoughts, perspective on that one? I know it was for the earlier panel. This was asked by Kitesh. Actually, there's one more, which was more interesting for the incentives one we were talking about, right? And maybe if you guys have a perspective on that. The question was more about, this was asked by Lucky, what are your thoughts about making the open source contributions competitive? Incentivizing contributions, by incentivizing contributions, right? Can this have an opposite effect of giving rise to low quality contributions in the long run? Right? If you tied it to that. I mean, I have a thought, but I've thought if the panel also wants to respond to that.
So I just want to add.
I think Karan, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think probably I froze for a second over there. Okay, so one of the things is, see, I want to emphasize on the word incentive over there. All right, an incentive doesn't have to be a tangible incentive. It could be something that just makes you feel good, or probably gives you brownie points with whoever you're working, or how you want to be seen in the industry, etc. From my experience, what I've seen is competition for contribution really helps you just get a foot in the door, kind of understand. But definitely I've seen a whole lot of instances where it leads to low quality contributions, or contributions which don't really add any value. And the more and more I speak to a whole lot of open source leaders and maintainers who look at really the long vision of the project, they are more interested in having probably just a handful of contributors, or even a very small room of contributors, but having them invested in the long term and making more quality contributions, rather than have contributions just for the sake of it. All right. So competition, I'm not saying it doesn't help, but it probably helps in just driving awareness and getting a foot in the door, and then trying to understand how something works, and then really understanding the potential of some of those contributors to help drive long term. And it's just something that you would have to think about it again from history and first principles as to why does someone even contribute to open source just as a general developer, right? It's hardly because of the incentives. It's mostly because of the learning that they get, the peer network that they meet, making an impact in something that they themselves are using, etc. So these I would definitely qualify as incentives, not just motive, which I think should be similar, probably in a different flavor for some of the DPI and DPGs.
Yeah, and I think if anything, there is more opportunity to do that, as you noted earlier on, right? Here, the code that you're contributing to serves a larger purpose too, right? I think that's the strength that we need to, as a community, need to build on and leverage more than just like the incentive mechanisms. Cool, wonderful. No, I think that's a great note to sort of bring this panel to close. Thank you again for your time and joining us, and as I said, supporting us on the journey. We look forward to being associated for even longer and in future editions of C4GT too, as well as the longer term community engagement program. Thank you once again.
Thanks, Nitin, and congratulations to the cohort.
Wonderful.
Yes, great work. Thank you.
Thanks, Nitin. Thanks, Samagra, for putting together this great program. Really excited to see the contributors giving back to DPI and DPGs.
Wonderful. No, and I think that sort of brings us to the formal close of the event as well. I personally and I think the entire team is really feeling excited and looking forward to the journey from here. The coding period starts tomorrow for the cohort. Again, many congrats once again, and welcome to the cohort, and look forward to the next 2 months. Intense, fun learning period. Make the most of it. As well as I think aside from the community program, from the mentoring program, there's also the second, the longer term community program leg of C4GT, which was also has recently been opened up. We launched it on 22nd of June. So do encourage your friends and everybody else to join that too. The links of all of these will be shared in the chat section and also shared later. So, yeah, check out those links, check out those projects. There are about 100 of them already. More are being added. And we welcome you on the journey and look forward to a great time and great time of learning. Yeah. Thank you again, and bye-bye.